Hi, everybody. Stephan here for our final episode of Get Smart About Email Marketing. I'm really excited to have you guys. This has been a phenomenal experience for all of us. I know we've learned a ton about email newsletters, about landing pages, about marketing automation. A little bit what to do with our subscribers. How do we learn what they're all about and what they're interacting with, and provide them more relevant content that they're going to love. And today we're going to wrap things up with my friend Justine Jordan over at Litmus. She's their marketing director. Totally awesome woman, more passionate about email than I am, which is saying something. And Justine's going to talk to us a little bit about email design and some tests. And I think the bottom line is trying to figure out how we can create that one-on-one experience that we've been talking about this whole time, and do it in an elegant way, and do it in a way that as somebody goes from their desktop over to their phone, or vice versa, or tablet, that they're getting this great experience, and we're delivering it to them. Obviously, you guys know what'll happen then, right? They're going to want more of your email. They're going to interact with it, and everything's better that way. So I guess without further ado, I want to bring Justine in and just remind you guys that even though this is the last one, we've got a lot of great stuff that we learned about from this show. We're going to be bringing that out, rolling that out to you guys. So stay on our email list, subscribe to YouTube, things like that, so we can stay in touch. So Justine, thank you so much again for joining me. I know you were traveling all over the place, and I welcome you back over to Boston. So tell us quickly about Litmus and what you guys do, because you're sort of the central part of this whole thing.
Litmus is a software company. So we build online tools, SaaS tools that you can log in on to any web browser, and we help you test your email and make sure that it's ready to go before you send it out. So we take screenshots of an email, what it looks like in Outlook or Gmail or an iPhone, Android. We also make sure all the links work, that all the images aren't broken. Kind of a comprehensive QA check on the email to make sure that it's all set. We also have spam testing. We also do something called email analytics that lets you see where people open your email after it's sent, kind of complements all the stats that are in your ESP. Ton of great resources on our blog, educational tools, and then even a builder tool to help you build the email. So some of these tools are free, some are paid, but we also have a free trial, and we'll give you a coupon at the end too if you want to check them out. So thanks for having me.
Oh no! Again, thanks so much. I mean, you guys, I've known you guys for a long time, and you really are at the forefront of email design and seeing and pushing the envelope and really understanding, getting into that nitty gritty. So, I mean, it's an honor to have you guys on. So, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about mobile. So let's get that out and over with. Elephant in the room. Really, why are we designing for mobile, even if it's there's great stats that support this, but even one step further, why are we designing our emails for, mobile first?
Absolutely. The stats is a great point. That email analytics tool, we collect more than 1 billion opens every month worldwide with that, and that gives us some really amazing power to be able to say where are people opening emails collectively worldwide. And the latest of those stats say that more than 50% of people are consistently opening email on mobile. We have some customers that see more than 70% of their emails being opened on mobile, which is really crazy. But it's not just because people are opening there. It's because it's a better experience. I think you already mentioned that I have a background in design, so I feel very passionately about this idea of what I call subscriber experience. And it's the idea that any of your people that are opening your emails, you should be delivering the best possible experience you can to them. And if they're opening emails on mobile devices and you're delivering them tiny text or links all crushed together that's really hard to navigate with their fingers, they're going to get frustrated. And Blue Hornet actually did this amazing study called the Consumer Views of Email Marketing, and they even found that 80% of people would just delete emails that looked bad on mobile, and then I think 30% would unsubscribe. And that's really huge, because if you send an email that looks bad or is frustrating to use on a mobile device, and someone unsubscribes because of that, you can never email them again. So that experience is something that's really hard to measure. It's hard to quantify. It's not part of the typical marketer's arsenal of the stats they're looking at. There's no, opens, clicks, crappy experience, metric in your ESP. but it's something that we all need to be better about being aware of and making sure that we're not frustrating subscribers or preventing them from converting because our emails are hard to read and hard to use.
Yeah, you're right. And I know that there's the next phase of that too, which is making sure the entire experience is perfect
It's
for them, as perfect as we
yeah.
can get for them, right? So those click-throughs and things like that. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a huge part of it. Like I think a lot of people when they think about email design, they just think about the graphics and the layout, like in the body of the email and that thing that you put in the inbox. But if you really think about it, like even if you have a really great open rate, which is like 30%, right? Maybe a little bit higher, but people are only going to see, only 30% of the people on your list are going to see that artifact, that actual physical email. And so much more of design is really the planning and the strategy that goes into even getting that to the inbox. So it's the inbox, right? It's the from name, it's the subject line, it's the preview text. And then after they do open, so if you get those 30% of people, which is great, if you have a really crappy landing page that also is impossible to convert on mobile, then you're going to lose all those people that you just invested all that time to get them to open. So it's not just the email, but it's the entire experience from the inbox to the conversion point, wherever that might be.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think we talked a little bit about this too with Georgiana from Unbounce last time on our show because that was all about landing pages. And so I think we've come full circle on it, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to throw kind of a devil's advocate at you. Is there
Oh.
ever a time when you don't want to design for mobile, or are there, because we're talking about the customer experience and how your experience has to, go all the way through. Does it make, can you argue or validate the point that if you know that you don't have a certain type of experience on the other side, that it may make more sense not to design, to carry that whole thing through and not to design for mobile, to maybe encourage more people to say, oh, this is the type of thing I need to be on my desktop for?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are very specific use cases or examples where you have data to back up a non-mobile approach, but I still think that there's lots of degrees of how far you can push mobile optimization. On one end of the spectrum, like the really simple end, you can do really simple things like just bumping up font sizes and making buttons bigger, and we kind of call that mobile friendly, and it's really approachable, anyone can do it. On the other side of the spectrum, you've got things like responsive design that involve a lot more like specialized code or being able to get into like a pre-built template. We actually just launched some on our website today, some templates that you can use, responsive design. And, and then there's kind of things in between too. And so you have to know your audience. You have to have data around what they want, what they need, what your business is trying to do goal-wise. And then you also need to think about the resources that you have on your team and what your production and your workflow looks like. And all of those things added up together are going to tell you whether or not you might want to approach a more simplistic mobile-friendly way of doing things, or go full in and do responsive design.
That's a good point. And as you were talking about having the resources in your team, I mean, that's again really, really important. And I made a note that when we are done, I have an email that I have to get over to a client because I'm part of their team.
Yes, exactly.
So thank you for that reminder.
No problem.
All right, good stuff. And so speaking, and so you kind of segue into a really great point, which I'd love to, maybe expand on more. So what are some of our best practices for really just email design in general, right? I mean, you mentioned a couple of things like the fat finger syndrome, right? Having links too close to each other in small fonts. But so if you had, like, let's say a list of, basic tips, but even, that I guess that go into the best practices for email design, and it could also be content too. I'm going to turn it over to you. Fire away. Give us your best shot.
Yeah. I'm just going to, again, emphasize how important planning is in that whole process. That design isn't about the graphics and layout initially. It's about having a plan for the content. It's about knowing your audience, about knowing what your goals are. And I think that can help you really lead you down what best practices apply to you and which ones you can sort of selectively choose at first, especially if you're just getting started. And so when it comes to, content and planning, again, know your audience. Who are you sending to? What have they opened in the past? What are their expectations? Are they opted in correctly? Like, all of that kind of stuff is really important. Then when it comes to content, it's really shorter is better. People don't read these days. We actually, a really good point is we last week did a webinar, and we had thousands of people register, and it blew us away. And multiple times, we probably sent 5 emails during the course of your experience with engaging with us with this webinar, and every single one of them said that the webinar was going to be recorded, and we literally got hundreds of people asking if the webinar was going to be recorded. And so people don't read, and we can get angry about that, or we can just accept it as fact and like cut half the copy out of our emails and get right to the point and just really emphasize the important parts. And that's why knowing your audience and understanding your goals is really important, because then it's going to help you cut out all that fluff and just get to the point of what's going to resonate with the people you're sending to and what's going to get them to take action. Because really that's the point of email. So then, when we get to the final email itself, we talked about making fonts bigger. You definitely want to do, I would say 16 pixels is a good aim to start, especially for mobile optimized. It sounds a little big, but anything smaller than that, especially if you go 13 pixels or under, iOS, which is what iPad and iPhone operates on, is the operating system, is going to automatically resize fonts that are under 13 pixels. So you might as well at least do 13 as your minimum, but I typically do like 14, 15, 16. I always say I like big buttons, and I cannot lie. It always gets a good chuckle out of folks. A good guideline for that, and this is actually from Apple, the iOS developer guidelines. They say 44 pixels by 44 pixels at a minimum. People say, I don't know what pixels are. I say the rule of thumb, right? That's how big like your thumb is. You want to be able to stick your thumb, on your screen and make sure that it's thumb friendly, that the buttons and the calls to action, that kind of thing, are thumb friendly. So not as much copy, bigger fonts, kind of touchable links. And that's the general theme to keep in mind, is that keep it short and sweet and interactive with a touch interface, because that's going to embrace most any sort of mobile or tablet environment that it's out there today.
And then also things like single column, right? Because that also that helps you have the real estate.
Absolutely.
So that, right. Yeah, this way you have the real estate so that you're not, you're not forced to squish something because you have, the full width of your phone and your device. I should have brought up my my test that I just did. I had done an email test for you through you guys. I'll see if I can pull it up quickly in a minute or two, because I wanted to show everybody, a little bit about that, especially the mobile part of it, because, you were talking about, and the test I did actually was about a confirmation email for a webinar that I'm hosting in about a few weeks. And what I realized was the only thing on there, the only call to action is add to calendar. And it was a link that you could click on, uses addthisevent.com, and it takes you over so you can add it to your calendar. The thing I realized was, and it looks great, it's beautiful, passed all the tests, but I need to cut out about 2 sentences worth of copy, because on iPhone 6 and 6 Plus it's perfect, but on 5 and on a couple of the Android devices, it's like literally just below it. It drove me nuts. I'm like, damn it, now nobody knows what to do. They're going to see this thing and be like, well, now what do I do? I'd rather that big orange button be right front and center for them. So I'm going to try and pull that up, because it'll just really illustrate what you just said, which was to keep things concise and actionable. Yeah. So, all right, so we talked about a little bit about that, I have a little list for myself, because you guys cover so much stuff that I wanted to make sure we hit on all the good stuff. I guess let's just dovetail into some of the different tests that you talked about it a little when you introduced Litmus, but let's talk a little bit about some of the uniqueness of some of these tests that you guys can run over there, because I think it's really helpful to understand, even more than just like the little preview generator that we have in our email service providers, because understanding how things look in a browser is different too. So I'm gonna shut up. You go.
No, it's okay. I have to be honest. Like, a lot of the tools that we develop at Litmus have been born of our own needs, And so it's really kind of cool as the industry evolves, and even I have challenges building emails for Litmus that I can go to our dev team and say, hey, like it'd be really cool if we built this because I need it, and if I need it, other people probably need it too. So they're not just bells and whistles for the sake of bells and whistles. They're tools that are really, frankly, helpful because we've had to use them ourselves. So yeah, you know, as you mentioned, Stephen, there's this need to just preview what an email looks like in different programs and apps and clients, because a browser, you know, email is not the same as web design, and a lot of folks, I think, approach it that way initially because they think, oh, it's HTML, and HTML is going to render the same more or less like everywhere. And it's really more like the browser wars, like back in the 90s, the case of email today, because what your email looks like in Chrome or Firefox in your ESP or your mailing tool is not what it's going to look like in, say, Outlook or Gmail. And that's actually because whereas like a web browser is going to render using you know, WebKit or some other another rendering engine for the web, something like Outlook actually uses Word, which is a word processing engine to render, and that's kind of insane. Or something like Gmail actually strips out the entire style block. So if you're taking web-ready HTML and CSS and trying to port it over to email, that entire style block, all that CSS is going to get removed. So there's other unique considerations and like ways that email tries to destroy your HTML. And so the previews are huge because it's going to take screenshots and eliminate any manual testing that's involved there. And show you that instead. Oh, look, there Stephen's got the
Yep,
test
I brought them up.
No, that's
And I can show you guys
awesome.
BlackBerry if you want. Let's do that just because we can.
Oh
Just 'cause
yeah,
everybody wants to see one of these things, right?
yeah. So BlackBerry is super fun because it shows you, you know,
Didn't work.
some borked version of, you know, the text or something else. So.
This is as good as I got over here. I did get my my link in there, but it didn't really work out so well. I'm trying to. Where do I get? How do I go back to the other ones here? Let's go. Oopsie. Let's go to. I'll show you guys what I was talking about, though. And you know, you can kind of see that for the most part, all of these look the same. You know, pretty close to it. I mean, just even at a glance, you can see that most of these are looking very, very similar. I guess what we can do is we could pull up here. This would be a good example here. So you have Android 4.2, right, which is pretty recent. And so here was my problem. This is like the default email app for an Android. This is what you guys tested on. And I love how, and actually, like Justine said, I sent an email, actually signed you up for my landing page because that was the easiest way to do it. So I sent an email to Litmus as part of their testing tool, as opposed to just copying and pasting the HTML or forwarding it or whatever. And the idea behind that, like Justine said, everything's going to get rendered the right way. So as you can see, I got to pull things up a little bit because the most important part here is one scroll down, and that kind of stinks. On Gmail, look how goofy my my image got. And again, I'm pushed farther down, and you know, my button didn't center, but that's okay. I mean, that's one of those things I don't really care about. The Gmail experience, the Gmail app experience is something actually I think I want to touch on a little bit later because it's a little, it is interesting, and your State of Email 2015 report, which came out last week, has some interesting info on it too. All right, we did BlackBerry, gross. This is iPad. iPad looks great. iPad Mini looks great. So here's iPhone 5S, right? And same problem. I'm just missing my big call to action, but for iPhone 6 it works great. So, you know, again, I ran this test, and one of the things I think I would go back and do is to probably honestly just switch the copy and the button and then just have the text underneath it, because honestly here's a confirmation, this is all it is, and being able to run this was super helpful. And I even got a Windows Phone one.
I think that's a
cool.
great illustration of the relationship between design and rendering and your goal. Because if the goal of this message is to get these folks to add it to their calendar and it's not visible right away in the design of the email, it could affect your email's ability to meet that goal. So again, like design is so much more about just like the layout, but it's about, understanding the goal and knowing what it takes to get that done.
Oh, there they are. I had to scroll up. That's what I was looking for before. Should we show any other ones? We can go like throwback. It's only Tuesday, but we could go throwback Thursday and show you Lotus Notes.
Oh yeah, Lotus Notes is always a fun one.
Lotus Notes does not work so well. Actually, the interesting thing with the Lotus Notes one was even on the older Outlooks, my button still showed up as orange, but my button text is white. So that was something I was interested in. Like, okay, what's going to happen now? I know I have white button text, so if my background doesn't show up, you're going to basically see nothing, which we see here. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, but I was comforted because even, again, some of the Outlook versions, they showed up, again, you could see up top here, they showed all of my button text. So I didn't really have to go back and overhaul this approach, which made me happy.
Absolutely.
If that happened too much, it wouldn't have, that would have been...
And you've actually got a good example there. Like if you scroll back to go look at Outlook 2007 versus Outlook 2011.
Do we have to look at 07?
Yeah, for fun. So in this one, I'm going to guess that you're using a max width, and that's why that green bar at the top there stretches over the course of the email. And it's kind of a tenet of what we call a fluid design, which is another approach that you can use to make your email mobile friendly. And the interesting thing about Outlook is that it doesn't support that idea of max width, which is telling basically the HTML telling the browser, in this case the email client, to constrain the width to a specific size, but to be flexible otherwise. And so Outlook 2007, since it's being rendered by Word, isn't going to support that. But if you go look at Outlook 2011, for instance, you can see that constraint is working, right? It's not kind of expanding to fill the whole width. And that's because Outlook 2011 actually runs on a Mac. It has a different rendering engine, which is WebKit. So it's needless to say, it's complex, right? Rendering an email is kind of a wild beast. Litmus has a ton of great resources that kind of outline all those different rendering quirks and why they happen and that kind of thing. Actually, I'll kind of look up that blog post and put it in the chat here. But
you
I think you have a great example there of one of the issues that can happen with Outlook.
Yeah.
And
exactly. And I think it brings up. I'm going to take off the screen share, and I think it brings up a. First off, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I could be totally self-promotional and put a link to that landing page that you guys can register for, so you can get that email for yourself if you want. We can do that. But anyway, one of the things I think that's important now is to understand. Okay, well, what is the breakdown? Obviously, like we showed in Outlook 2011 versus 07, or better yet, let's go back to the iPhone versus Android thing. Can I prove? How do I test? How do I prove that I have enough people using 6 and 6 Plus? And then which shows my little add to calendar button, and that I don't have to worry about this. And I can make the same comment about Outlook, or if you're doing something that's a little more intricately designed, that's using that max width thing, or a lot of times if we're using, I think, our email designers from the email service providers that we have probably don't know what's under the hood a lot of times. But if you can prove that, okay, I have Outlook 2007 or Outlook 2007 or 10 rather is a lot of my subscribers. Well, I need to design it a certain way so that I'm not, I'm not shooting myself in the foot, because even though they're opening it on a desktop, but we want to still deliver them the best experience possible. And if they're going to open up an email and then all of a sudden they see the text and then it pops up, which happens to me because I have, I think, 2010. So I get emails and all of a sudden they blow up and you see these gigantic images because they aren't, it's not going to support the extra design. Well, I'm going to have a different kind of an experience,
Yeah, absolutely. And I just found that article about it's called "Where Should You Focus Your Testing Efforts?" And it's a great overview of exactly what you just said. Like, how do you understand your audience to know where you should be testing, and then how do you understand the rendering implications of all those different email apps and programs? So I'm going to pop that into the chat here.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Which kind of dovetails into an interesting thing that, again, your State of the Email 2015 report came out last week. I know those of you who are on my email list, I believe I sent that out, a link to that. So if you didn't get that, you can sign up below, and you should probably get that, or I'll send it out to you at some point with the replay as well. It's a phenomenal download. It's free. Check it out. And the thing I loved about what you guys did in there is you broke down all of the major changes in the email landscape, and you talked about what the action steps were and what some of the things that are worth looking into, right? Because that's the thing. I mean, all these things come out, people go crazy, the bloggers go nuts, the pundits and everything. But then, what does that mean to me? Do I have to care? And so you guys got into a little bit of that. The one thing I was really interested in was the Gmail caching, the image caching, and how how that affects us, because I mean, open rates are now way up, which is great, but we're kind of constrained with a couple other things we can do because of that. Can you touch a little bit on that, especially like the geolocation thing, and maybe give us some techniques to see whether it's something we should maybe reevaluate our strategy for?
Yeah, absolutely. So this idea of open rates, this metric in the email industry is a challenging one. It has a lot of things that make it a bit imperfect, and that's all right. It's kind of, we got to do the best we can with the tools that we have and the technology constraints that are introduced there. But first of all, it's important, I think, to understand how open tracking works. And it's a little 1-by-1 pixel, like an invisible image in an email, that that image has to be loaded in order to trigger an open. And this isn't specific to Litmus or any of the ESPs that are out there. It's kind of an industry standard. Again, it's limited just by the technology that's available. And so image blocking is something that happens in a lot of different email programs. There's a link that says, must download or must click here to download images, or images blocked to protect your privacy. There's all kinds of ways that can be positioned. But until those images are turned on and loaded, an open isn't tracked. And so recently, or not recently, but about a year ago, Gmail introduced changes into how it handles images in email. And what it's doing now is, instead of that image tracker being stored on either your server or, say, your ESP server, which is, again, normal behavior, what Gmail's doing is it's taking all of the images in your email and storing them for you on their server. And what that's called is image caching. And it's kind of a good thing, at least once they ironed out all the bugs, because it helps serve images faster. It means that they're not going to block images at all anymore. So that means one thing, your open rate is going to increase because all those images are automatically turned on in Gmail now. But because they're caching the image for you, it also sort of removes the ability to get some additional behavioral data, because instead of the image being served up by your servers or being loaded up by your computer, it's being served by Gmail servers. And so those are often in something like Mountain View, California, because that's where Google is located. And so for things like geolocation, they also rely on some sort of magic happening behind the scenes and looking at special details that image kind of serves up. It's called a user agent, if you want to get super technical. But since all that that image is now on Gmail servers, it's going to show you that, like, geolocation, for instance, is going to show up as Mountain View, California. It also removes our ability to see, for instance, what browser is being used. We used to be able to tell if Gmail was being opened in, say, Chrome or Firefox. And perhaps the most important implication of all of that is that webmail opens, which is Gmail open in a browser on your computer, and Gmail app opens, which is if you have the Gmail app installed on, like, your Android or your iPhone, they now look the same. And so as a result, it looks like webmail opens in Gmail also shot up over that period of time. And so the bottom line is that just Gmail opens are a little bit more confusing to interpret now because of those changes they made. It's an overall, I think, positive impact to the industry, because we'd rather have images automatically turned on. It just, as marketers, we need to figure out other ways to maybe get that data that we already had access to. So if we were relying on geolocation data, maybe we need to start collecting, like, zip codes or something like that to better work around that. So.
Yeah, and then there's also the element of experience where you were saying, now the Gmail app is reporting as being the same as Gmail web opening up on your desktop. So if you had designed an email with the intent of being opened on a phone and having it, that full experience on a phone, and then now the reality is you're getting the same kind of report that somebody is doing that somebody's doing what you were expecting, as the same as somebody who's not doing what you had laid out for them. But those two guys are lumped in the same, which kind of stinks. And so I think your point is for all of us who are, and I know for myself, like I looked at my own stats for devices and all in my email service provider, and I realized that like Gmail was like far and away just blowing everybody away, and I'm like, there's no way, because I have a lot of corporate clients, and I know that a lot of these guys are using Outlook, and I know that they're and I know that they're just not, the Gmail crew, that Gmail crowd.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's just certain persona. Plus, I got to imagine that there's apps users, Google for Work, that probably get lumped into this as well. So there's a whole bunch of different nuances, and so I think, the big takeaway for that stat, or that that thing you guys reported on, is to start getting a little more creative with how we can understand more about our our users, our subscribers. What are they doing? And I love the zip code idea, or a state idea, or some kind of a preference idea. If you can try and come up with something where you can match what you're expecting them to do with the time of day, maybe you have a better idea of whether they're on their phone, or whether whether they're out and about, or whether they're at their office. And so there's a lot more creativity, I think, that we need to start thinking about when, and again, this goes full circle back to what you said before about the design. How do we come up with a design and an experience for everybody so that it goes beyond just the visual, and it gives us good information, because now this is getting to be a little bit trickier.
Absolutely, it's different than it used to be. That's for sure. And people say that email is stuck in 1999 because of the coding techniques we have to use, and I think that's really changing. There's a lot of creative, innovative things that we can do with email, and we shouldn't let that mindset stop us from kind of pushing the envelope in email.
Yeah, and okay, so again, God, you're good at this. This was like my next segue. We're kind of, we're coming to the end of this, and I wanted to ask you, who's really pushing the envelope in an email? Like, who's just crushing it? Because I honestly, personally, I want to go subscribe to some of their newsletters. I want to understand what they're doing, and see how I can apply that to my own, my own campaigns.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be selfish here for a minute and say that, frankly, we're really leading the charge on that, or not me, but Kevin Mandeville and Jason Rodriguez, who do a lot of the email exploration and development here at Litmus. So if you're not signed up for our emails, please do so. I'll put a subscribe link in the chat. Or you can just go to litmus.com/subscribe. Make sure you get our emails. So we have a couple blog posts too. We put HTML video, HTML5 background video in one of our recent emails. We've used CSS animation. We even used a really unique hack that uses checkboxes to do an interactive tour of a new feature in an email. And of course, a lot of these things have limited support, but it's all about the concepts of progressive enhancement or graceful degradation, or kind of piecing those two things together, which is, let's provide a baseline experience, a minimum viable product for the majority of people, but then progressively add on top of that experience for the individuals where it's supported to kind of give that better experience, right? So yeah, definitely take a look at ours. Campaign Monitor is doing some really neat things. So is a little email agency in the UK called Action Rocket, led by Elliot Ross. And then I'm actually, he's super smart. And then, oh gosh, it's a lot of people, and even ESPs that are doing crazy things in emails. So the internal services team over at Oracle Responses is sort of spearheading this. I've heard it called kinetic, but it's another type of interactivity in email. B&Q, which is like kind of Home Depot in the UK, did some really neat interactive emails. I think they also did something similar for Lego. And actually, the other thing I would definitely recommend checking out, so Jason and Kevin do a podcast called, perhaps appropriately, the Email Design Podcast. And if you go to emaildesignpodcast.com, you can look there. It's on the Litmus blog. But they do this really frequently. They highlight exciting, cool emails that people are sending and that type of thing. I think at the end of 2014, they even did a roundup of their favorite emails of the year. And I would definitely check that out as well. So lots of people doing cool stuff with email that like I said, are kind of pushing the envelope and kind of taking it to where it's never been before.
Well, that's awesome, and it's really it is helpful to see because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and
Exactly.
right, and you get opened up, your eyes get opened up to something, and like Pinterest, for example, Pinterest is doing some really interesting things with just I think how they're segmenting emails and their subject lines continually blow me away. I love them; they're fun. So actually would love to interview them. If anybody listening knows how to connect me with somebody over at Pinterest, that would be super cool. Um, but in any event, they're doing something unique, and I hadn't even some of the things that I'm realizing now that my eyes are open to it. I don't, wow, I could try this, and just I see what they're doing. You pull back the curtain a little, and then you have some opportunities to get creative yourself and try things out yourself. It all comes down, and this kind of is a nice little wrap up for the whole series. Like it comes down to creating great content, testing things out, really understanding the experience, understanding the things that you want people to come away with, knowing your buyer, or not just your buyer, but knowing your subscriber, understanding how you send different messages and the kinds of messages you're interacting with, because obviously that's a big part of it too. The transactional emails versus your newsletter, for example. There's different ways that you can get involved with those and get people involved with those. So there's all this stuff I think comes really full circle here to some of the stuff you just said. So I appreciate it, Justine. This has been super helpful. And also I see that you're dropping some of those links in chat, which is great. We'll make sure that whoever's watching on the replay that we have those links available to you too. So I guess at this point let's wrap things up. I really appreciate you and your time and all of this great information that you gave us. Thank you, everybody especially all those who watched all 4 episodes of Get Smart About Email Marketing. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you're smarter about email marketing, and I hope you continue to stay in touch so that we can have that one-on-one interaction in each other's inboxes. I guess Justine, where we had a cool little thing we were going to offer everybody. You want to?
Oh yeah, of course. Thanks for reminding me. So I wrote it down so that you can see it. If you go to litmus.com/LP/Shovi, compliments of Stephan here, you'll get 2 free weeks of Litmus. So that's all of the testing and the link check and the image check and the analytics and the spam test and the whole shebang. So we'd love to have you check it out and see how it can help you make your emails better.
Yeah, definitely. Can I do it?
Yeah, you absolutely can.
I might have to cheat and upgrade myself a little bit for a couple of weeks and play around.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again, everybody, for joining. Again, let's stay in touch and keep an eye open if you haven't already. Scroll to the bottom of the page. There's a place where you can join our email list, and we'll be able to keep in touch and get you guys more information about not only this replay, all the other shows. There's we learned so much out of this whole thing. Oh my God, I have topics and ideas to expand on all the things we talked about coming out the wazoo, and I'm just super excited about all that. So thank you guys again, and have a fantastic day. We'll see you around.
Thanks, guys.